Hello there, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Before we jump in today, I want to give a special shout out to my listeners from Australia. I was looking at the download numbers this week and I was so excited to see a new country added to the listener base. I smiled so big when I saw listeners tuning in from down under. So happy to have you here with us, and I cannot wait to connect with you. So, today we're talking about something I'm personally guilty of, which is letting my perfect evening routine become this relationship blocker. You know what I mean? It's like that sacred me time that you've perfected after decades of pure insanity and basically just running yourself ragged. But it also might be keeping you single. I'm going to share the 5 sneaky ways this happens. Trust me, I've done them all, plus more probably. But this does not mean that you have to sacrifice your hard earned peace. Stick around to the end because I'm going to share a free worksheet that will help you create this wiggle room for dating without throwing your self care out the window. Welcome to Intentionally Single, Seeking But Not Settling. I'm Lauren Jean, your host, integrative wellness coach, and hypnotist. Each week, we explore mindset shifts and mind-body strategies to help you live life intentionally single and content while remaining open to possibilities. Unlike typical dating advice, we focus on personal fulfillment to attract genuine love. Join us to transform unconscious patterns and embrace your intentionally single lifestyle. Stop feeling deflated by the dating world and start prioritizing the most important relationship, the one with yourself. So I got this message from Sarah in Chicago that made me laugh because she totally called me out. She asked, Lauren, you're always talking about balance between independence and connection, but I'm curious, what does your evening routine actually look like? Have you ever had to mess with it for dating? Oh my goodness, if you only knew how much this question hits home. After my divorce, I developed what I now recognize was this ridiculous evening routine, which is specific when I didn't have my little kid at the time, which is she's now a teenager, but at that time she was little, so it was harder to do it then. So I had dinner at exactly 5 p.m., never after. And oh my God, if anyone who would ever call or try to disturb me during that time, forget it. And that was followed by 30 minutes of some quiet time in my then what I used to call my reading chair. You know, that one that's like perfectly positioned for lighting. I had mine near the window because it wasn't quite dark then. And I would sit there and just relax and just take my time doing whatever I needed to do. And then I would do a couple of other things throughout the evening. And then right at exactly 8 p.m., I would go to sleep super early because of my work schedule and I wanted to get my beauty sleep in. And sleep has been always really important to me. This was my way to recharge during a tough time, but damn, it was inflexible now that I look back at it. This breakthrough I had came when I decided to start getting out there again, and my immediate thought was yes. I should say wasn't yes, but it was during that my evening time was so important to me that when it hit me, I had built this beautiful healing routine that had somehow morphed into what felt like this beautiful prison that I just couldn't escape from. I could, but I couldn't. Like, I was having a really hard time with it. Now, I still do all of those things these days and a lot more, but they float around my schedule when I can fit them in the best. So, what works so I can do other things? So, sometimes I meditate and it happens around 6 p.m. Sometimes I do it first thing in the morning. Sometimes it's randomly in the afternoon. Reading might happen at a different time. I still get all of the benefits, but now there's this room for spontaneity and connection and conversation throughout the day. So, thank you because this question really inspired this episode for today. So, thank you, Sarah, for that question. All right. So, I have a confession. Last month, I caught myself doing something so ridiculous that I had to laugh at myself. A friend of mine asked to get together in the evening, and my first thought wasn't about him at all. Not at all. It was this total panic about my Friday evening ritual being disrupted. I did not want that at all. And I think you know what I mean. It was that weekend sanctuary time where we've all perfected. I've spent this years and years perfecting this tiny little bubble of tranquility. And the thought of trading it for an evening out, even a couple hours, my gut was like, no, no, not doing that. And then it hit me. That routine that I had naturally fallen into after my burnout over 10 years ago now had quietly transformed like a life raft into this handcuffs that just kind of kept me trapped. And like so many of us Gen Xers, I've finally built a life perfectly calibrated to my preferences after decades of being walked all over. I should say, allowing myself to be walked all over. But that perfection had become its own kind of trap. All right, so let's get real about what's actually happening here. I have identified 5 sneaky ways that your healing routine might be keeping you single. And trust me, I've caught myself doing every single one of these over the past 10, maybe more years. So let's get into the first one, which is being in your comfort zone. Remember how in your 20s you'd happily trade sleep for adventure? Okay, I'm going to admit this was not me. It was my friends. I did see it a lot and most people, but that was not me. Those days are gone. Your evening routine has become this sacred territory. That reading chair that's just positioned so perfectly. Your favorite shows are ready to go, your fuzzy socks, and those ratty sweats that you wouldn't wear anywhere. It is like this heaven after this really demanding day at work or dealing with children or dealing with an ex, all of that stuff. The problem is trading your perfect comfort for putting on proper clothes and having small talk with a stranger that you've met online or maybe in person. It just feels like this terrible plan that's just not going to work out. I had someone tell me recently, why would I trade my guaranteed good evening for a date that probably won't go anywhere? What is the point? And I honestly got it. I understood. When your comfort zone is that comfortable, stepping out feels like this high risk, low reward proposition. When Netflix and your perfect pillows that are just calling your name always give you this 100% satisfaction, a first date offering maybe a possibility seems like just a stupid idea. I really understand it. The second thing is this one is very subtle but powerful. Your healing routine isn't just about pleasure, it's about actual recovery, like wanting to feel good. You've figured out exactly what you need to function the next day after decades of trial and error. All these times that you've dated or maybe been married, or like me, married twice. I had someone tell me, I know exactly how much sleep I need to not be a monster at work. I feel the same way. I'm very strict about my sleeping routine. A weekend date, I should say a weeknight date, or even a weekend night date, means getting home late, which means being exhausted tomorrow, which means potentially bombing a presentation. And for this person, dating wasn't just about giving up comfort, it was about risking possible professional consequences and not doing as well at work. This math feels really simple. Driving 30 minutes each way, making conversation when you're already drained, getting home past your bedtime, all for someone you might not ever see again or just have interesting text conversations with. This is a barrier that makes it even interesting enough to feel like, why would I potentially do this just to not have this connection work out? It's like too much effort when you're calculating tomorrow's possible exhaustion, like when you know it's actually going to happen. The third thing is you have this home sanctuary and it feels like really good protection. So, after years of compromise, maybe being in a relationship or a marriage, your home has finally become your space. The temperature is how you like it, the kitchen is arranged how you want it. You could leave clothes all over the floor. It doesn't matter. There's no one there to tell you what to do. Everything is exactly where you want it. And this sanctuary feeling gets threatened by dating in 2 ways. Either you have to leave it which means like trading your Friday night ritual of takeout in ratty but so comfy sweats for getting dressed up and going to a noisy restaurant and you just don't like it. Or eventually you might have to share it, which means compromising your perfect arranged home for someone else's preferences to make them feel comfortable. I notice this one of myself all the time. It's this moment of resistance when choosing between my perfect evening at home versus the unknown quantity of a date. The sanctuary almost always wins. I'd rather just stay home. It's a sure thing versus a question mark. I'd rather just stay home and be comfy. Who doesn't want to stay home and be comfy? All right, the next one is particularly common for us Gen X women who have spent decades shape shifting everything to please others. Your healing routine represents your hard won, authentic self, the things you actually enjoy without any compromise at all. And there's this fear lurking beneath that surface. If I start adjusting my routine for dating, am I falling back into old people pleasing patterns? I felt this exact way. I spent almost 7 years accommodating my ex-husband's preferences. Never again. That's the fear right there. Never again. I do not want to have to accommodate anyone else ever again. It's like putting this gigantic wall up, like the wall of China. That's what it feels like. This authenticity protection makes total sense, but it can create this all or nothing approach where any flexibility feels like you're surrendering your true self rather than creating this space for new connection and meeting new people. And this is the one that hit me really personally. Your healing routine provides guaranteed comfort, while new relationships are full of uncertainty and just temporary dopamine hits that go away very quickly if there's no real desire. It's just like having fun for a little bit. We're just kind of done with that. When scheduling conflicts then arise, it's like this weird relief that washes over you. It's like you already knew that you were creating resistance and hoping that it wouldn't work out, hoping by the time you got to Friday night, something would happen. And usually something would. I caught myself doing this last year when on a dating app, someone suggested meeting on one of my days that I didn't have my daughter. Those are my days where I can just be myself, do my own thing, and not worry about her, know that she's taken care of. And instead of suggesting an alternative to this, I felt this strange satisfaction that in that schedule conflict, it gave me this permission to mentally file him under like almost another connection. So it was like I was still trying, but it didn't work out, and that's okay. And I emotionally checked out before things got even complicated and before I even got to know him at all. Does any of this sound familiar? These are the 5 saboteurs that create this perfect storm for us Gen X singles. These are the very practices that have restored us after decades of putting others first, having hardened into these invisible barriers, keeping these meaningful connections so far away. I want to share some science about this, about what's actually happening in our brains in midlife so you can understand better, because I love the science piece. I love doing the research and bringing this to you. I came across this research from Harvard Medical School about the wonders of the middle-aged brain, and it explains so much about what we're experiencing here. The science shows that while, yes, there are some changes in our 40 and 50s, like when you walk into a room and you can't remember why you're there, please tell me I'm not alone in this. I know I'm not. Our brains are actually entering a period of this remarkable strength in many ways. And according to this research, our midlife brains have developed this incredible capability that our younger selves just simply didn't have. We have more experience. We're better at inductive reasoning, making those broad connections from specific observations. We're more skilled at complex problem solving. And maybe most relevant to our conversation today, we've developed what is called emotional regulation skills, which is what I talk about a lot. I might not use that term, but I use it a lot. And this is the ability to focus on the positive emotions rather than dwelling on the negative. So, managing your emotions better, more of like emotional management. This was shown in a brain imaging study at the University of Wisconsin. And the researchers compared younger adults with those in midlife. And when they were shown disturbing images, the younger group's emotional centers lit up for both negative and positive images. But in the midlife brain, it activated only for the positive ones. We have developed this neural wiring to focus on what actually matters and to let go what doesn't matter later in life. Isn't that really incredible? I love this research. And what I find most validating about this research is this discovery that the process of what's called myelination, which is the development of a fatty layer that helps neurons transmit information faster inside your brain. And it actually continues well into our 50s and 60s, mostly in the areas that process emotional memories, and it encodes our long term memory. So we're not declining in midlife. In many ways, we're actually reaching our cognitive prime, which is incredible because a lot of the times we hear that, oh, your brain is aging and you're getting worse. That's not what this research is showing us. And here's the piece that directly connects our conversation about this flexibility in our routines is the research shows that our brains still maintain this incredible neuroplasticity, which is the ability to form new neural connections. A Stanford study showed that midlife adults who regularly introduced small variations in their routines showed this greater cognitive flexibility and significantly lower stress response when faced with unexpected changes. And the researcher who led this study called it practiced flexibility, which is intentionally introducing small variations in your routine that build your capacity to adapt without throwing your system into fight or flight, which is in your sympathetic nervous system. It's like flexibility training for your brain, not just your body. And this is what I do each day now. And I have been doing this for a while. It's like doing these hard things every day. And a hard thing can just be doing something different because you're so used to doing the same thing and getting into a routine and doing that repeatedly. So it just becomes automatic. I take my routine and I kind of break it up and I spread it out. And it's as simple as not parking in the same spot every single day at work, or taking a new road, or brushing your teeth in a different time during your morning routine. Simple things like that. And I believe that this has helped me so much because it's constantly keeping me on my toes. So, going back to this. So, when we feel that resistance to changing our precious routines, because they are precious to us, it's not just stubbornness, it's our brains following those well established neural superhighways that have been developed over decades of our life. But the good news is that with this gentle, intentional practice, we can create new neural pathways in our minds that make adaptation easier and less stressful to us. I find this extremely reassuring to find this in the science because even as we navigate the sometimes like choppy waters of midlives, our brains have developed extraordinary strengths that make us uniquely equipped to handle complexity, making thoughtful decisions, and yes, even adapt our carefully crafted routines when it serves our deeper goals. So, this is where I call my flexible self-care framework comes in. And it's completely changed my approach to balancing well-being with dating. This is a practice that I have been doing for a while on and off because it really helps me stay on track with all of the things that I want to do for myself. And look, I know us Gen Xers are set in our ways. I get that. And we're proud of it because it took us generations to get to this point. And we absolutely should be doing these things for ourselves. We have earned this level of self-knowledge after all these decades of figuring out what works for us. And this is a loving, but if we want to allow a wonderful potential partner to actually find us, we need to build some flexibility into our well-established routines. I want to be super clear about something here. This does not mean sacrificing your lifestyle or what makes it feel like you. It doesn't mean throwing away your beautiful evening ritual or becoming a completely different person. That is not what this is about. It means creating just enough wiggle room for possibility to sneak in. I share on this show, keep your heart open to possibilities. That's what this is about. I want to share my own self-care inventory to give you a concrete example so what you can kind of imagine what I'm talking about in your mind as I'm speaking this. So after years of exploration and self-discovery, and this is, let me think how long I've been doing this for, since 2010, all right? That's a long time. I've developed this collection of practices that support my physical, my mental, and my emotional well-being. So this is over the entire time that I've been divorced from my daughter's father. I have a bunch more than what I'm about to share, but these are the recent ones in the last month because they do shift from month to month. So first I have cold therapy, which is generally showers, and I usually do anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes, and I started with 30 seconds to start. I've also done cold plunging. That's not something that I've done in the past, I'm going to say 6 months, but that has helped me a lot too. Then I have sauna sessions. I usually do the infrared sauna for up to 30 minutes. I do Wim Hof breathing techniques. I have skincare rituals, facial massage, which I actually just found on this Instagram account. I just found her a couple days ago. Let me look her up so I can give you the right account to find. And she is absolutely incredible if you want to find facial massage that can actually help change the shape of your face without using any type of like creams or like having to buy anything really. Okay, her account is called Anastasia Beauty Facial. This girl is incredible. She's only 31 years old and I love her routines. So I've done this kind of thing for myself and I've used those, the little scrubby pads that you use in the shower. I get them in like the dollar store for like a pack of two. But I've always used this as something that I do in the shower. So I can add that to my facial massage. But I've always done it just because it feels good. But my face, I have been told that I'm probably a good 10 years younger than I actually look. So I suggest maybe trying this out. Okay, so next we have blood flow restriction training. This is something I'm not quite ready to do an episode on because I'm still in the learning process. But basically, what it is using kind of like, what do you call? I can't remember what they're called. They're like this. It's not a contraption. It's like a strap that you use on your upper arms, and your upper legs, and you can use lower weights and get the same effect that you would get with doing like a heavy weightlifting routine. So I like to use this blood flow restriction training on times when I just don't like feel like going to the gym, but I still want to get a good workout. So I'll do it at home. Then I have walking my dog, reading at night, weight training. I do lifting heavy weights because I'm in the perimenopausal state of my life. And weight training is highly effective for that. I've also done the research on that in particular in an earlier class when I first started school. Then I have all walking with no devices. And all walking is basically just taking in everything that's around you and putting yourself into this sense of wonder. I actually did a podcast episode on this specific topic. Check it out. It's just a couple of episodes ago. I can't remember which one it's called, but I'm sure you can find it. And then I have walking while listening to podcasts. So that's just kind of like my listening time. Then I've got morning sunlight exposure, watching the sunset. I have yoga, meditation, non-sleep deep rest or yoga nidra, which is basically lying down. And it's kind of like a lying meditation where you're not sleeping, but you're not fully awake. Then there's yoga wheel stretching, which I love my yoga wheel. Sleep by the latest 9:30. And this one I still struggle with. It sounds kind of crazy, is watching a non-educational movie just for pleasure each week. I am such an education junkie that I have a hard time watching something just for pleasure. So Netflix can even be hard for me sometimes. So hearing this list, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, how does she fit this all in? And where would dating even go? And the truth is, I don't do every single one of these every day or even every week. They fluctuate based on my needs, my energy levels, and yes, my social calendar, which is not huge, but I do fit times in. So this breakthrough came when I stopped seeing this as this rigid checklist and I started viewing it as a flexible like menu of options, each offering different benefits that I could access in different ways at different times and for different durations. So here's how it works in like real life so you can use it. I started by creating what I call your self-care inventory, which is what I just told you, all of the things that I do. And basically, it's a brain dump of all of your healing practices that you love, from meditation to skincare to reading time to your favorite TV shows, anything that you want to put on that list. Everything that restores you. I keep this in a simple checklist form, no fancy planner. You can do that if you want, but I just do it as simple checklist to keep it simple. And then this is the game changer. Divide it into the list in two honest categories: your need to do's, which is these are the non negotiable practices that genuinely support your core well being. For me, this is quiet time like walks or meditation and movement in some form every single day, and proper sleep so that I get no less than 7.5 hours. Because without these, I'm not my best self. I feel very different. I don't have the energy and the excitement that I normally do in my everyday. And then there's your want to do's. And these are the enjoyable practices that enhance my life, but won't cause like a meltdown if occasionally adjusted. For me, this is whether I do cold therapy in the evening or whether I do an all walk or I listen to a podcast while walking. Everything else is pretty much flexible throughout the entire day. So you want to look at this list and really ask yourself, what could slide for a day or even a week without making you fall apart or feel like you are losing yourself? Do not let your routine cause you to pass up a possible great connection just because it doesn't fit into your calendar. The amazing person isn't going to show up exactly when you have free time. That's just not the way it works. Next comes this flexibility assessment. For each practice, ask yourself 3 questions. First, there's time flexibility. Can I do this earlier or later in the day and still get the benefit? So, for example, I discovered when I do a yoga practice, it doesn't actually have to happen at 7 a.m. It gives me the same benefits at like 6 p.m. or right after dinner. Then there's your duration flexibility. Does this need to take exactly 30 minutes or could it be somewhere between 15 minutes and still help me? I found that even a 5-minute yoga nidra practice still can really help me ground, and that's all I need time for. Then there's location flexibility. Does this have to happen in my special chair? Does this have to happen in my bedroom? Or could I do it somewhere else occasionally? Like my facial massage routine works just as well well, I said I do it in the shower a lot, but if I was to go somewhere like travel, I could easily take that little pad with me, or I can go to Anastasia Facial Beauty and I could use one of her routines. So, what you end up with is what I want to call this flexible playlist. Like, you remember those mixtapes we used to make back in the day? But instead of songs, it's like these self care practices that can be rearranged according to your needs and your dating opportunities. And this profound truth I've discovered is that the essence of these practices, the feeling of groundedness, the sense of peace, the physical well being, doesn't actually depend on this rigid timing or perfect circumstances. By releasing our death grip on exactly when and how we receive these benefits, we can create space for something equally valuable, which is human connection with a possibility. Okay, so here's exactly what I want you to do this week. I have created what I'm going to call this flexible self-care framework worksheet. I just made that up. Flexible self-care framework worksheet. Really catchy, right? And your first action step is to go and download it. And completely on your own, you can get this self-care inventory. Don't overthink this part. Just brain dump every single healing practice that's currently part of your morning and evening routine. You can even just put this right into your cell phone now. You don't even need the worksheet, but I created it for you. Your skincare steps, your reading time, your meditation, your Netflix shows, your tea ritual, your coffee, your journaling, everything that constitutes your me time. Then comes the brutally honest part, assessing each practice and classifying it as an either need to do or a want to do. This isn't about judging your needs. It's about getting crystal clear on what's truly essential versus what's just nice to have. I've included some journal prompts in the worksheet that might bring up some interesting insights, such as what parts of my routine would genuinely affect my well being if missed, versus which ones am I just attached to out of habits? What is the actual impact when my routine gets disrupted? Not what I fear might happen, but what has historically occurred when my schedule changes. And a spoiler alert here, most of us catastrophize way more than reality warrants. Okay, next is looking back at the last month. What potential connections or invitations have I declined because they've conflicted with my routine? Guys, this one can be really eye-opening. I know it was for me. Another one is, what would a more flexible version of my fulfilling life actually look like? One that preserves what truly matters while creating space for new possibilities. Your specific challenge for this week, and I want you to actually put this in your calendar, is to intentionally modify one comfortable habit slightly each day. Like I said, park in a different spot, nothing dramatic. Maybe read in a different spot in your house, meditate at breakfast instead of before bed, or take a different route during your evening walk. These small shifts are like flexibility training for your brain. They build your routine resilience without triggering that fight or flight response. Micro changes that make us cling to our comfort zones. It's like building a muscle, going to the gym. You don't start with a 50-pound weight, you start with like a 5-pounder and work your way up. All right, so before we wrap up today, I want to share something I've been reflecting on lately about, and I'm going to call it this comfort paradox. There's this beautiful irony I've noticed in my life and in working with clients and hearing listeners' stories, is the stronger your internal sense of security becomes, the less you need external circumstances to be perfectly controlled. When you know deep in your bones that you can return to your center no matter what, venture beyond your comfort zone doesn't feel so threatening. The healing routines you've established are not wrong, not by a long shot. They represent wisdom, self-knowledge, and essential self-care after decades of adapting to everyone else's needs and schedules. This includes children, of course. I want to be crystal clear that I'm not suggesting you disrupt these practices for the sake of a relationship or for anyone else. What I am suggesting is developing such a strong internal foundation that small modifications don't rock your entire world. It is the difference between a reed and an oak tree in a storm. The reed will bend and it survives, while the rigid oak might actually break. True security isn't actually found in having every element of your routine perfect. It's found in knowing that your center remains solid, regardless of whether you meditate at 7 p.m. or 8:30 p.m. When you trust your ability to return to your healing practices, even after occasional detours for possible connection, you can explore possibilities without that knot of anxiety in your stomach. And remember, this flexibility serves you first and foremost. The increased adaptability, the richer experiences, the broader perspective. These all enhance your life whether or not you even go on another date. The goal isn't disrupting your perfect life or a relationship, but expanding your capacity for all types of connections while honoring the peace you've worked so hard to create. The ultimate healing is not found in perfect routine, but in that sweet spot balance between structure and spontaneity, solitude and connection, consistency and adventure, all while knowing your core essence remains wonderful and uniquely you. All right, my intentionally single friends, here's your homework for the week. Head over to the show notes right now and grab my free flexible self-care framework worksheet. I said that perfectly this time. It's a lot of words. Flexible self-care framework worksheet. I've made it super practical so that you'll create your personal self-care inventory, honestly assess what's essential versus nice to have, and develop your own customized flexibility strategy. Just click on the show notes. I'm going to have it up in the show notes, and that will also possibly bring you to the website. But no matter where the show notes will be, you should be able to click on it. If you cannot for some reason, because I'm new to actually uploading freebies for you guys, you can reach out to me on Instagram at the Girl with the Vine Tattoo, or you can email me at intentionallysinglepodcast@gmail.com. So trust me, this exercise might completely change how you approach your routines and your dating life. I would really love to know what you like, hearing your thoughts about those sacred parts of your routines, the ones that feel absolutely essential to your well-being, and which aspects you might be willing to gently modify to create space for connection. I'm really genuinely curious about what you've discovered works for you after all of these years of trial and error. I'm also interested in some new ideas to add to my own inventory. So like I said, just slide into my DMs on Instagram at the girl with the vine tattoo, or shoot me an email at intentionallysinglepodcast@gmail.com. I personally read every single message, and your insights might help someone else in the community who might be struggling with this same balance. And I'm also always looking for new ideas. So coming up next week, again, I'm not really sure. I used to plan out the episodes, but lately I've just been kind of doing them on the fly. But I really do want to hear what you have to say. And I can't wait to see what I come up with for next week. So until then, join me next Saturday again. And remember, intentional singlehood is not about settling. It's about creating space for what truly matters to you. And please always remember to keep your heart open to possibilities. And I will see you next week.